All eyes are on Doha, where mediated hostage for Gaza ceasefire talks have renewed between Israel and Hamas. Top U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff is joining the talks and says the Trump administration is expecting a deal. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The talks in Doha come weeks after the expiration of the first phase of the hostage ceasefire agreement, with the return to war in Gaza a distinct possibility. Key U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived at the talks with a strong message that the Trump administration intends to leave Doha with a deal on phase 2, or at least an extension of the first phase of the deal, and bring more hostages home. Before arriving in Doha, Witkoff said that he would aim to set deadlines. Witkoff insisted that all is on the table, but only after Hamas agrees to disarm and leave Gaza.
A starter is Hamas demilitarizing, not rearming, leaving all their arms on the ground, and leaving Gaza. That's the start.
Okay. Do you believe Hamas is willing to accept the IDF in a peace deal or some sort of negotiated truth that would leave their military in Gaza?
I believe they have no alternative, Bill. There's no logical or rational choice for them other than to leave. If they leave, then I think all things are on the table for a negotiated peace deal.
Witkoff said if they leave, then all things are on the table for a negotiated peace, and that is what they will need to do. The Trump envoy had high praise for the role of Qatar in the talks and chances for success.
The Qataris have been great. Sheikh Mohammed has been, he's mediated many crises all over the world, he and his team. He doesn't get the credit for it. We give him the credit. They've been outstanding in the way that they have engaged with us, with the Israelis, to get the hostages out so far that we've been able to get out. And I think they've been really an important part of the peace process.
Israel has mixed feelings about the Qatari role as both mediator and Hamas ally. For now, Israel is giving the Trump team a chance to make a deal that will end Hamas presence and bring the hostages home.
And IDF soldiers are on alert in and around Gaza and remain deployed in readiness for the potential return to the battlefield. Amid the ceasefire, the IDF hit 2 terror squads in north and central Gaza. The army said both Hamas cells were attempting to ambush IDF troops. In both cases, the terrorists were attempting to plant explosives. One was eliminated by sniper fire and the other in an aircraft strike. After the ceasefire period ended, Israel halted the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza and also announced that Israel would stop supplying electricity to the enclave. Israel has also warned of an imminent return to war if ceasefire extension talks fail to yield an agreement. Meanwhile, the Houthis are threatening action. They say that they will renew attacks on Israel beginning today if Israel fails to lift the blockade into Gaza. During the war, the Houthis launched rockets and drones at Israel, and the Houthis say they will begin with attacks on Israeli shipping. And joining us now with the latest developments on the war in Gaza and the ceasefire deal negotiations is Colonel and Professor Gabi Siboni from the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So the delegations are in Doha, in Qatar, for renewed negotiations. And the Trump administration seems to have shifted its stance in recent days, softening its demands, perhaps, of Hamas, even directly negotiating with them. So first of all, what do you make of this new tactic, sort of the U.S. direct talks with Hamas?
I don't know. I'm not a U.S. decision maker, so I don't know. I don't know the way the Americans behave. Anyway, I know what should be. We all know that Hamas willingly will not free all the hostages. No way. This is their insurance policy, and they will not release them. So we are trying to do the best now to get as many hostages as we can through what we call stage 1, the extension of stage 1. Hopefully this will realize, and we'll have some 10 hostages, living hostages back. And then I think we'll get to a point where we'll have to take a decision. Hamas we have to understand, Hamas is not the issue. I've heard now in your report about saying Hamas will have to leave. Hamas is not the issue, it's not the problem. Hamas is only a symptom of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is the population of Gaza, which is really a barbarian mob. I have no better word to describe them. This population, if given, let's say, Hamas will leave and will be exiled and will relieve their weapons, they will invent new Hamas, Hamas B, Hamas D, other organizations. There will always be a reduction. We will not be able to, we have tried it already, to stop the enforcement of terror capabilities in Gaza.
You know, you mentioned...
Because they would come... Yes, please.
Yeah, you mentioned the Palestinian population itself. You know, Israel is currently trying to begin this implementation of the Trump plan for Gaza, which would see the relocation of Palestinians. But this plan doesn't seem to have any international backing. You know, Israel has a...
It will not have, no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is the plan still on the table? Is it a feasible plan?
Yes, it is. I believe it is on the table. It has to be on the table because there is no other solution for Gaza. Otherwise, what will happen? Let's assume that Hamas is exiled, whatever, I don't know, put their weapons, those laundry of words. And we will have to fight in Gaza for decades. Our soldiers, our brave soldiers will have to fight in Gaza and shed their blood in Gaza to confront developing threats in Gaza, because this is what will happen. We have to move the population, to migrate the population out of Gaza. Now, I'm sure, of course, Trump has put it on the table, has normalized this discussion, and countries are still stuck with this, what we call the paradigm of two-state solution, all this, you know, that we hear all the time, as nothing has changed. We have to put a lot of energy from Israel and together with our friends in the United States to make sure that the vision of Trump is realized. I know it is difficult. I know there are many obstacles, but we have to do it. And we have to, it's much better than fighting in Gaza. So we have to do it. And I'm sure if we put our energy into it, we will find states that will be willing to take some of the population of Gaza. You know, many countries have stated their support, endless support to Gaza. Spain, Ireland, Italy, Germany, Canada, Australia. So let them put their money where their mouth is and do some kind of support to this issue. And of course, there are other places that people of Gaza can be moved to. This is the only solution of Gaza, and this is what we have to do. But the main condition for this to happen is destroying Hamas, either by exiling it or whatever, if they are willing to put their weapons down, or just fighting them and killing them. So that's what we'll have to do, and we must do. And we'll get to the position of decision, I think, very shortly, depending on how the talks in Qatar will realize. One remark, though, because I've heard that the Americans are praising Qatar. It reminds me of Charlie Chaplin movie, who is going breaking windows and comes to mend them afterwards. Qatar has invented Hamas. Qatar is still, as we speak, providing money to Hamas in Gaza, as we speak. So Qatar is playing a very, hypocritical game. It is really a terror state. And the Americans, for their own interest, I don't know, praising them for their support, be it, I don't know. For me and for many in Israel, I think Qatar is considered and should be considered as a terrorist state. We are stuck with Qatar because we want to relieve our hostages. But other than that, we shouldn't have any business with Qatar.
All right. Well, Colonel and Professor Gabi Siboni, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Many dream of building a home in Israel, a place filled with meaning, connection, and heritage. Now that dream is a reality with Sparta Real Estate. Jewish families around the world now get to find their home in Israel, whether in the vibrant streets of Tel Aviv, the rich history of Jerusalem, or an escape on a coastal getaway. With Israeli real estate expert Eliyahu Kleinman, every bureaucratic step is taken care of for you. It's that easy. Scan the QR code now to begin your dream, and Eliyahu will contact you directly.
And as talks are in progress to get the remaining hostages out of Gaza, the family and friends of the only Nepalese hostage in captivity are fighting for him to be released in the next deal. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian spoke with them. Shosh, in the studio now, tell us about Bipin.
Well, imagine never leaving your home country, ever, but you decide to. You go to the country that you're supposed to be studying, working in, you arrive, and then you get kidnapped by a terrorist organization you had no idea even existed. Many people don't know the story of Bipin Joshi, but he is credited for saving many lives before he was kidnapped on October 7th.
He knows how to lead, and he's very open to. He's also into the spiritual things, like he used to do meditation every day.
24-year-old Bipin Joshi left his small village in western Nepal to study and learn agriculture in Israel with 17 other students. Known as a natural-born leader, Joshi arrived in Israel 25 days before October 7th and was living on kibbutz Alumim. When rockets began firing into Israel from Gaza, Joshi and the other students took cover in a nearby bomb shelter. His friend who survived the attack details that morning.
We were told that if there will be siren, then we have to go to the bomb center and it will be fine. We don't think that something this bad could happen to us. But after 1.5 hours, somebody shouted from the outside. Two of our friends go outside to see who was shouting, and they saw them and they just shoot at them, both of them, and they threw 2 grenades inside and it got exploded, and due to that explosion, 5 of our friends got injured.
In a matter of seconds and quick thinking, Joshi picked up the second grenade and threw it outside of the shelter.
If both the grenade has been exploded, then I don't think I would be alive today. They grabbed him, they grabbed Bipin, and they took him with them.
Footage released by the IDF and confirmed by friends and family believe it shows Joshi being dragged on his 2 feet into Shifa Hospital on the morning of October 7th.
On the particular incident, he had called with his cousin and he said him that we are in a risk and to take care of family if something happens to him. This is still difficult for us to believe it, that was the last text from him to his cousin.
His best friend Bhumika said Joshi had no idea what Hamas was before October 7th. She says he was dragged into a conflict he has no prior knowledge of and is now being held as a captive without any reason.
He must return back to all of us as soon as possible, so he shouldn't lose his hope. Our family is waiting for you, entire Nepal is waiting for you, and you must be back to all of us, and we know that you will be back to all of us.
Yeah, Lidar, it is emotional to hear these stories. Like, they're new stories that keep coming out of these hostages still in captivity. Now, there have been no signs of life from Bipin since he's been in captivity, but he is believed to be one of the 24 hostages still alive at this point, according to some Israeli officials. And we know that 59 hostages in total are still in Gaza at this time.
Shosh, incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And turning north, the Air Force struck targets in Syria overnight. The attack came amid signs that the new regime has been committing atrocities against its minorities. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The army said that military bases were attacked in Syria in the vicinity of Dara and Quneitra, both army posts of the former Assad government. The Israeli strikes came after Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar warned that the new Islamic rulers of Syria were pure evil, after the killing of over 1,000 Alawites by the new government's forces in recent days. Alawite leaders in Syria appealed to Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying, "Save us from the brutal regime," We will welcome you with songs and flowers. The letter was sent through intermediaries between local populations in Syria and Israel. Israel has repeatedly warned of the dangers from the new regime headed by an Islamic faction that emerged from al-Qaeda and led by interim President Ahmed al-Shara. New IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir toured the Israeli-occupied Syrian Hermon. IDF forces moved into the area following the fall of the al-Assad regime in order to prevent the area from being used by radicals as a base for attack against Israel. There are indications that the IDF is planning a long and perhaps semi-permanent presence on the Syrian high ground. Israel has been saying that it will extend protection to the Druze minority in the area and is considering allowing its residents to work on the Israeli side of the Golan.
And now, as President Trump's crackdown on anti-Israel protesters continues, a U.S. judge has temporarily blocked the deportation of a Palestinian Columbia University student. More on this from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
A U.S. judge has temporarily halted the deportation of Palestinian Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil, setting a court hearing for Wednesday. The decision comes amid President Donald Trump's crackdown on certain anti-Israel protesters. Khalil, originally from Syria, is a key figure in Colombia's pro-Palestinian student movement. The movement sparked campus demonstrations across the U.S. and globally last year. Trump labeled Khalil a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on social media, stating that his arrest is the first of many to come. The Trump administration has not specified any criminal charges against Khalil. However, the president posted that his presence in the U.S. is contrary to national and foreign policy interests. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced on X that the administration is revoking visas and green cards of Hamas supporters to facilitate their deportations. Khalil is currently detained at the Jena La Salle ICE facility in Louisiana. On Monday, hundreds of protesters gathered in Manhattan to oppose his arrest, with similar demonstrations erupting on campus. Columbia University professors argue that rounding up students contradicts U.S. law and academic freedom. Last week, the Trump administration announced the cancellation of $400 million in federal grants and contracts awarded to Columbia. Some, however, are celebrating the arrest. Finally, an anti-Jewish activist has been arrested, posted Brooke Goldstein, executive director of the Lawfare Project, on X. Godspeed. Good riddance.
And joining us now with more on the latest developments of the arrest of the pro-Hamas student at Columbia and the ongoing anti-Semitism across U.S. campuses is Michal Kotler-Wunsch, Israel's special envoy for anti-Semitism. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Lida.
So we've all seen the anti-Semitic attacks on Jews on campuses around the United States, and Columbia University seems to be really at the forefront, both in terms of its students and faculty and their sort of anti-Semitic behavior, but also in that the university has done practically nothing to try and curtail this and ensure a safe environment for its Jewish students. You know, why is it, do you think, that the university has done so little? I mean, is this a calculated decision, or has the issue of anti-Semitism simply gotten so out of control?
So we have to be very, very clear in reminding that anti-Semitism is a symptom. It is a symptom that is historically the most reliable sign of what threatens humanity and freedom and the dignity of difference. It's not just about anti-Semitism, if you will. Anti-Semitism is a manifestation of something much, much deeper, including in university spaces. We know that there have been billions of foreign-funded dollars, including Qatari dollars, poured into Columbia University and others as well. We understand that what we are seeing now are just symptoms. And yes, including the most recent student visa violation of, existing policies by supporting what is a designated terror organization in the United States of America, i.e. Hamas. This is just symptomatic, and we should be seeing on the streets of New York City, presumably, the demonstrations that protest against the support of Hamas and other designated terror organizations. Instead, what we have seen, including in Columbia University, is precisely the opposite. we have seen systematically the support of terror organization feigning or in the name of human rights and progressive values that actually, when you don't have to do very much to strip the surface, you can find the very same individuals, including the specific individual we're speaking about now, calling to explode the head of Zionists, just code for Jew, on those very campuses, streets, online, and elsewhere.
And so now, what do you make of the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, who's led the anti-Israel and anti-West protests at Columbia?
It's very important for me that we actually focus on the fact that what he has done is violate the policies not just of Columbia University, but of the United States of America, not just in what is represented by his systematic and systemic anti-Semitism that he codes as anti-Zionism, but in fact in violating the policies of the university. We have to remember, this is not about speech, it's about conduct. This is an individual that was involved in grave injury, including to university employees, in taking over buildings physically. That's conduct, not speech.
And, you know, is arresting and deporting these pro-terror students, obviously it's a welcome and you could argue necessary policy, but is it enough to put an end to the anti-Semitism on U.S. campuses?
Devastatingly, first of all, we have to be very clear. A policy has to be applied equally and consistently. If there is a policy for those holding student visas that have been violated, we must act in the same way to everybody, equally and consistently. That's the first order of business. That's where the due process will come in, and a court of law will decide if indeed the student visa has been violated. And your question is very important, because that will not, devastatingly, end what we have seen as a systematic infiltration, including to Columbia. And I began with a foreign funding that has systematically actually enabled, for example, a professor who was exhilarated and celebrated the October 7th massacre to teach a course on Zionism at the very same Columbia University. We understand that there is a long, very, very long, decades of a process that has, with blood libel, for 50 years, including in international institutions, in academic spaces, in online spaces, turned Zionism into racism, blood libel #1, turned Israel into an apartheid state, blood libel #2, and after the 2023 massacre, in the most Orwellian inversion of fact and of law, turned Israel into a state that is a genocidal state that perpetrates a Holocaust. We have to be very clear on the fact that these are just the reactive whack-a-mole responses that we are able to identify and remove the threat, or the national security threats, including to democratic spaces, including to the United States, including to Columbia University. But they will not put an end to the systematic infiltration of anti-Semitism, as what I began with. The most reliable sign of a major threat to humanity and freedom and the dignity of difference. And we can only do that by comprehensively identifying and combating all strains of what is an ever-mutating lethal hate.
So still a lot of work to be done to root out anti-Semitism, a threat to all of humanity. Michal Kotler-Wunsch, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around most of the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 12 degrees Celsius or 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, sun should be shining once again, with temperatures at highs of about 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.